Hey there. If you're like me and you're trying to get something off the ground, there's definitely more than one way to go about it. But today I really want to share the benefits of going with key performance indicators as opposed to looking at things on an hourly basis. Now, it's one of those things that's still new to me, and in creating business agreements, it can be really abstract. Coming from more of a manufacturing background, I just went and grabbed something off the sample shelf today. So if I'm working with an hourly employee, per se, in a job shop, and this is our product, and say, hey, we know it takes 1 hour to make one of these from raw material to the finished product. And that means if each one takes an hour and someone's here for an 8 hour day, if they do better than 8 and it only takes them an hour, as long as we have our key performance indicators in place, which in a lot of things, especially lean manufacturing, there's a really great list as long as things remain safe, as long as the quality is maintained, as long as the process is just as simple, and the last thing is if it makes it faster, it's all fair game. And so, I mean, in that quality, someone would say, well, what about environmental? Well, that's part of quality. So, and as far as what the finished product looks like, if there's a sample, it becomes a very easy thing to look at. Oh, are these corners deburred? Is this countersink at the right depth? Are these holes? Is this thread? Are the threads good? So having standards to be able to check by, having good, checks and balances as far as making sure everything is toleranced. And if someone really takes this 8 hour process of making 8 pieces and puts it all down to 1 hour of time, it's easy to improve on the quality control as well, in terms of having pins and gauges to check holes, having an easy way to measure this with a dial indicator instead of a micrometer to really speed up the process, and have some specialized fixtures set aside just for this job marked in a special area, and have the process documented, where to find those special measuring tools, which means these things can be made a lot quicker. And even looking at the tools or the combination of tools and where to gather those things so they can be used in other jobs. So it's not a whole thing creating a special space of storage for things just to make this one job, which might become obsolete tomorrow. So in a business framework where looking for a business partner and wanting to have some key performance indicators if we're both working on a business plan, there's things like developing a cash flow. So some of the things might be data that I would need to come up with, and working with a business partner, they would need to come up with some data. So what shop supplies are we going to need over the course of a year? Being familiar with the shop, that might be more my thing. But what's it going to take to develop and launch a product that's going to come to market, especially if it's, say we're coming up with a pickle factory. That's the project we're really into. So the production machinery will be something that I would need to look after in terms of what kind of materials we're going to use. It's going to be a lot of stainless steel. Production time is going to be a lot slower than if we were to use something like mild steel or aluminum, because stainless steel is a lot gummier, tougher to work with, more expensive. And you also got to worry about not grinding mild steel in that same space, because when those particles of mild steel get on a piece of stainless steel, it's going to create rust down the road. So knowing all those things, being able to factor in that and come up with a concise plan of how that's going to unfold is a lot different than the other part of the pickle factory, which is on the day-to-day production side of where the pickle's going to come from. Are we going to look at growing these or contracting them? What's the brine solution? How is that going to feed in? What kinds of machines are other people using? How is this going to be done? So those two pieces need to come together, and happen at the, there's a term for it in terms of stages where those things are supporting information for the other aspect of the business. So that's where there's some key performance indicators, and I'm sure there's things like industry standards as far as, oh, food, health, and safety requirements are going to need to be met over here, and they're going to need to be met over here as far as, something's got to be vacuum sealed in a jar that's sterilized, and over here, there's machinery that's got to be able to be wiped down, sprayed down, and there's not going to be little crevices for bacteria to form. So there's standards in both of these areas, which can help feed into a KPI or a key performance indicator to really make sure that everyone's bringing all themselves to the job, but also if a day goes really well, to know, hey, I met my target. Now I'm going to feed back to my partner, see how they're doing on their aspect, and say if there's a timeline of a week, and saying, hey, we both know we can meet what needs to be outlined to meet our food safety regulations in the course of this week. And that's going to be the goal, and have all those things laid out on a list, and then go over those things together and see how we could do them. That would be one approach. And then there's also going to be some things like, hey, I'm going to have to write up this section of a business plan. What standard are we going to judge against so we know that we're on an even playing field with what we're going to put into this document? Do we both have the writing skills necessary? Oh, hey, let's both come up with a sample paragraph of what we'd be putting in there on our jumping off point on food safety. And then, oh, hey, that paragraph looks good. I'm on board with that. So even before getting into a partnership, knowing where someone's at with their command of the English language or whatever language we're in, and especially if it's a business that's going to incorporate English and French here in Canada, hey, I wouldn't have the French skills to support that. So a partner would need to know that and say, oh, hey, how are we going to deal with this hurdle? Because you're not going to be able to do your technical aspect in French. We're going to need to have some support come in on that. Or I might say, hey, you're not familiar with machines over in this part. That's something that I would need to oversee. That was a little abstract. I couldn't give you a good example. But anyhow, that's a good jumping off point as far as key performance indicators, because it's really challenging. And I know I face this myself as having this shop where if I have a process that's very quick, very easy, because we've invested in the right machine for the job, it's a lot different in terms of charging a shop rate than going and doing that same thing for someone else at an hourly rate. If they haven't bought that machine, it can cost just as much, which is a benefit of outsourcing to someone who's really got the skills. So that's one of those things that's got to be looked at in terms of a partnership, as far as what things are we bringing together, where we can really make good time on a project, and what are some things that we're even going to need to outsource that aren't really going to serve us taking the time to do them. And sometimes it's going to be, hey, how are we both going to bring our heads together and do some things that, if it comes to outsourcing, we're just not going to get this thing off the ground. We just got to come up with another solution to do these things. And that's where there might not be a key performance indicator used, but really just like, hey, we're going to have to just start hashing this thing out together, bouncing ideas back and forth. And eventually, I would say, wanting to be with someone who would trust that would come up with some key performance indicators in hashing that out. Oh, hey, can you call 3 people and see what they did in this situation and take some notes, and even charting out, okay, here's the key questions we're going to ask those people. Maybe it's, if I'm not a good note taker, I'll ask those people, hey, can I record this conversation to make sure I've got it all? And that way, if there's anything, when I talk about it with my partner, we can both sit down and listen to this call and make sure we're getting and extracting as much of your wisdom as possible. in order that we can reciprocate and bring that same thing back to you. So having some flexible understanding of KPIs and realizing how they can really benefit our lives instead of hourly progress, which that can really stifle innovation. As far as anyone I've known who's been in an hourly job, who's really wanted an hourly job, like, yep, I just go slow because I'm getting paid by the hour. And there's a balance there because like our sample here, unless there's a sample and a really clear understanding of what quality is, that's a challenge for people who have key performance indicators without really having a sample of really talking about the details of what a standard is for that thing. Because otherwise, that agreement is so ambiguous that before long, those expectations of one another and what we hold each other accountable to leave us under the shadow of our own egos. And that can just be an infinite shadow that we'll never see our way out of and can end a partnership as easy as it can begin a partnership. So on that note, here's having lots of great conversations and knowing what our quality and our standards and our non-negotiables are and being able to communicate them more effectively. So this is the first of many conversations, and it's been a great point for me to start thinking about them in a more clear sense, to be able to communicate them with others and show that I'm starting to do some work that's going to help to assemble a really great team. So thanks so much for watching. Please comment, please subscribe, please like, and really curious to the projects you're working on and how KPIs can be used. Have a great day, and we'll talk soon.